What ifs? What are some of the biggest what ifs in college football this year? Well, I got one right off the bat. Do you realize that Georgia's been undefeated in the regular season 3 consecutive years? They are 36-0 in the regular season the last 3 years. So what if they do it again? What if they make it a 4th straight year of going undefeated in the regular season? Well, Stats and Info tells me 36 plus 12 is 48. So they'd be 48-0 the past 4 years. But this would mean, in a more ground floor sense, Carson Beck may have won the Heisman. If they go undefeated, they're in Atlanta, of course. They're in the playoff no matter what. And so Carson Beck may have won himself the Heisman. He is right up there on the FanDuel odds board as a preseason favorite right now. It means those portal moves like Travis Etienne at running back, it means they paid off big time. It means Georgia got to dictate whatever style of play they wanted to, because unlike years past, this is not a Georgia schedule where they'll be favored by double digits the entire way. They go to Texas. They got Clemson neutral. They go to Alabama. They go to Ole Miss. So they will have earned it and then some. Frankly, no one has any business going undefeated against Georgia's regular season schedule. So if they do, in a way, it may be a better accomplishment than whoever wins the playoff, depending on who wins the playoff. But it will also mean they've grabbed the reins of the conference. One of the overarching vibes around SEC Media Days this week has actually been that even though Nick Saban retired, he's still the voice of the sport. He's still the premier face of the sport. And it's one of those deals where everyone else is kind of looking around saying, who's going to take this thing? Nobody. It's still him. In fact, in the aggregate, he'll make more money and you'll see more of him this fall than he ever made and you ever did when he was at Alabama. But if Georgia goes and just full-on hulks up on the conference this season, maybe they go on and win a title along with that. They put the conference in their grasp, because Alabama's had that for a while. And even though Georgia has been a premier program in their own right, going 1-5 against Saban, and Kirby did that when he was at Bama, never allowed them to take the conference by the throat. Maybe they do that in this scenario. So that's one. Then we go up the road a healthy ways, all the way up to State College. Close your ears back in Nashville, Jesse. But we got to ask this. What if Penn State is not any better in big games? What if they're not any more explosive offensively in big games? Statistically last year, one of the hidden, I can't believe it stats that exist in the college football ether is Penn State was a top 20 offense last year. Can you believe that? Not by the metric system or anything. Like we're going on just good old-fashioned stat keeping. They were a top 20 offense. It's because they padded their numbers against inferior competition. Because you know as well as I do, when they went to Columbus, 1.9 yards per attempt through the air, 2 of 19 on 3rd and 4th down. It was, as JR would say, it was bowling shoe ugly. And then they got Michigan come in there, run the ball 30 times in a row on them. Why? It doesn't matter. Penn State can't move the ball. They can't score. 74 yards total passing that day. So they made the move to bring in Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator from Kansas. It's just, if you know, you know on that chuckle. They brought him in, and that's supposed to be the voila. That's supposed to be the Drew Aller is now another year older, another year wiser, and we paired him up with one of the most explosive coordinators in terms of yards per play in the Big 12. So that'll take care of it, right? Well, you hope. It's not a guarantee, though. That's why we play the games, as Meemaw would say, and everyone else. So what if he's not? Well, if he's not, that means that experiment failed. And if he's not, I'm the last one to ever talk hot seat. I'm not talking about it here, but I think people would question James Franklin in a little bit different way because, as you also are probably aware if you watch the show, that would coincide perhaps with an in-state recruiting drought. They are, as of now, 0 for 8 on in-state kids, top 8 kids in Pennsylvania this cycle. That's never been the case, by the way. We went back and chronicled recent history. They're normally landing some of those kids. They don't lock down the Keystone State, but they're landing some of those kids. That could create kind of a combination of uncomfortability. Now, I do expect them to be significantly more explosive this year, so this here is not a prediction from me. I actually think it'll be a moot point. But if I'm wrong and it's not, that's an uncomfortable December. It's a Counting Crows mode. It's a long December for James Franklin. And lastly, what if our good buddy at Kansas State, Avery Johnson, becomes a star? Not just a good, solid quarterback, not just a dude who could do a Pert Plus commercial because of the hair. I mean legit, he's a star quarterback. Well, it may mean Kansas State had the better quarterback than Ohio State. Will Howard transferred from Manhattan up to Columbus. And if Avery Johnson outshines him, it makes, well, Chris Kleiman already looks pretty smart, but it makes him look like a genius. Avery was 56% completion guy last year. really good, dangerous with his legs, but if he pairs that with 62, 63% completion percentage, it means they upgraded enough to perhaps be the solid number one in the Big 12, instead of what it looks like right now, which is maybe Utah, maybe Kansas State, maybe Kansas, and then if you're talking to me, maybe Iowa State. Maybe it's Kansas State and then the pack. That's not something we expect in the Big 12 this year. It also is a fact that, well, it's an opinion, but I think it's a fact. Their schedule's pretty easy by Big 12 standards, which means they could be in play for a really, really high seed. They could win the Big 12, get a first-round bye. And do we whisper Heisman with Avery Johnson if he were to upgrade and become a star? Well, of course, that's where star quarterbacks go. They go to New York City at the end of the year. Just some what-ifs that have been on my mind here as we wrap up this third week in July.